Hi, I'm JJ. I told you in an earlier video that I was going to give you a few recommendations for some books from authors from around the country, around the world, I guess, from other countries. And my list was a little bit bigger than I thought. Some of these I absolutely loved, and then some of these I would still recommend, but they weren't among my top tier favorite books of all time. Just more, I'm really glad I read it, I learned a lot, and I want to pass that knowledge on. So these are all books that I would still recommend. And the first one being Elena Knows by Claudia Piñeiro, and that's an Argentinian author. And the translator for that one was Riddle, and that is about a mother, an older lady whose daughter dies by suicide, and she is absolutely convinced that she was killed rather than it being a suicide. So she starts her own investigation. The part where this story gets fascinating is the fact that she has Parkinson's, so she is really struggling with her bodily autonomy, and that is a huge theme of this book all along the way, as she's trying to navigate and the city and her daughter's past and everything, when she can't control her own body some of the time. And I just, it's a good, thought-provoking read, and I would highly recommend that one. The other one is, it takes place in Malaysia. It's Malaysian, I believe he's a Malaysian American author, but The Garden of Evening Mists by Twan. And that takes place in multiple timelines, but the majority of the fact is post World War II. So in Malaysia, they had been invaded by Japan during the war, and one of the characters, her occupation was to punish these Japanese war criminals. And it also deals with the after effects of colonialism. It deals with racism amongst its own, like, because there's Chinese people who live in Malaysia, and then you have like all these people who kind of like fled the other British colonies who are there, on top of also the Japanese who are coming in and invading. So there's this hodgepodge of ethnicities and experiences that it takes care of. It even mentions at one time the Boer War, which is something that I want to read more about down in South Africa. But it made me want to read more of his other work, and I actually have read one of them. It was basically a historical fiction novel, and that one was about kind of dramatizing Somerset Maugham, who is an author, and he had been in Malaysia for a time, and that it's kind of like retelling his story, or in a way that, you know, not quite a biography, but took enough events from his life to try to figure out why he was there, and perhaps inspiration for one of his more famous works. So I found that one interesting, but I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And it deals with this, this woman who has been trying to prosecute the Japanese war criminals, has her own past that she's been hiding from. And so when she's in Malaysia, she finally returns home, but she had been one of them who was captured, and her sister did not make it back. And she wants to learn to build a garden in memory of her sister, and she has to get over her prejudice and get the help of the exiled former Emperor of Japan's architect, or gardener, who is this brilliant gardener that she wants to have help her make a garden in honor of her sister. So they have these preconceived hatreds and biases against each other, and they both have things that they're trying to get beyond, and secrets they're trying to hide, and all this stuff that is also dealing around with this this highly charged political atmosphere that they're in, because, you know, post World War I, then they're going to be fighting off the communism that's coming through the Chinese side, and it just adds more that I didn't realize to that area, into that history, into that culture, that I just found utterly fascinating. Another one that I absolutely loved was Almond, and that's a South Korean book from Won-Pyong Sun, translated by Sandy Joosun Lee. And that is a story that for some reason or another really resonated with me and has come to my mind constantly since I've read it. And it was just this simple story, but there's this boy who was born with this sort of condition where he doesn't understand emotions, and so he doesn't feel them, and he doesn't fully understand, like, when other people are expressing them. Like, it's just not connecting with him, and he loses his grandmother and his mother early on, and is kind of alone, trying to wander the world, where they're the only two who were, like, trying to actively get him to, you know, be normal, to understand things so that he would fit in with the other kids and not be picked on and stuff. But he, you know, somewhere or another, like, weirdly befriends the class bully, who is actually, you know, like, the bad kid who they think has, like, no conscience and stuff. And the fact that these two can somehow, in the most random way, find a way, in a meaningful way, to connect and sort of help each other learn what it means to be human, what it means to, like, fit in with humanity, despite how society has already labeled them. It's simplistic writing, but so thought-provoking, and just I just thought it was so intriguing. It was a premise that I hadn't come across before, so I really enjoyed where it was taking me. Another one is from Egypt. It's an Egyptian-American writer. If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English, by Noor, Naga. And this is post-Arab Spring in Egypt. And it's interesting because you get this counterculture, like, from the young people who are now disenchanted because they thought that they could make change, that they could make things better, and things are either the same in some instances or worse in others, and they just feel this disillusionment from what they were hoping to accomplish. And it's also very experimental. There, you know, I don't even want to spoil, like, some of the structures and ways that this is written. I did enjoy, like, it's not quite a love story, but there is a slight romance focus on two of the characters as they try to navigate this post-Arab Spring Egypt, especially when she's coming from America to visit her homeland, and he grew up there poor, and what his experience is, and how he's still considered an outcast and slightly different. So they both connect on that, not fitting in where it should be their country, where they should belong, and they still just feel like outside on the fringes of this movement. And so that was interesting. Another one that I really enjoyed was this one is a harder read, but At Night All Blood is Black, and that is from France. The author is David Diop, and the translator is Anna Moschovakis, and that is World War I, where it tells the story of these two Singalinese soldiers who are fighting for France, and how their experience is different because, colonialism, and they are not properly treated within their unit, but also it shows the war, the absolute horrors of war. It sort of reminded me a little of All Is Quiet, All Quiet on the Western Front, just for the brutal descriptions of war, especially since it takes place in the same war. And then, you get kind of the opposite side because that was about the German side. But there's a more human, more horrific element that comes into play later. That I don't know if it's a twist, but it's just something that I don't want to spoil. But it was like, despite being brutal and stuff, it was also beautifully written. From Turkey, The Architect's Apprentice by Elif Shafak, and that was translated. No, I guess that was not a translation, but that took place during the Ottoman Empire, and it started out in 1540, and so this architect for the emperor is taking on apprentices, and he's building like the big structures and stuff throughout the Ottoman Empire, and what's it's kind of like an epic story. It's kind of a coming-age story. There's a slight, almost fable-ish aspect to it, but also a mystery type thing to it. There's a slight, first love romance, or at least like unrequited love. And there's an elephant. So Chota was a character in of itself, and it just, I loved the relationship between the boy and his elephant, and I loved the just learning about the architecture and stuff at the time, a bit of the history and culture of that time. I just really enjoyed this story. A couple that I still recommend and learned a lot from, but weren't like tier level as some of those that I mentioned before. From Kuwait was Mama Hissa's Mice by Saud Alsanousi, and that was translated by Sawad Hussain, and that is it takes place in multiple timelines as well, but it deals with the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq, and then the U.S. coming in and occupying it after the Iraqi occupation, and how everything changes, and how these groups of friends are on different sides of the culture wars because of their identity within Kuwait, which I was not even aware of. I know I have a huge blind spot when it comes to a lot of the Middle Eastern different ethnicities and stuff within each country, and the almost like I hate to use the word, but tribalism that they have, just an essence of trying to belong within a culture that's different from you, or trying to be I don't know, elevated when you're one of the ones within the country that are seen as like less than and stuff. And like, it's not just, you know, Middle Eastern politics and stuff, because I know this type of stuff happens elsewhere, and I'm not familiar with many of the different things, just because, you know, we don't learn a lot in school, so all my stuff has been me trying to learn stuff on my own. So I know I have lots of ignorance and stuff that I'm trying to get better at. But please, if I'm making any mistakes, or if I have blind spots that I'm not aware of and that you have recommendations for, or stuff, just please let me know. But I just found that interesting, because that was it was a time period that I was still a child when that happened. So like, I knew about our invasion and what we called the Persian Gulf War, but I didn't know any of the huge chess piece maneuvers and everything from each country, and why Kuwait was important. And I didn't know much about Kuwait itself, so I found that very necessary for me to read that, and I hope that if that sounds good to you, you'll give that a shot as well. Another one was Tunisia, and that was also post-Arab Spring. I thought it was cool that I was able to learn more about Arab Spring, because you just hear the words, but like, I didn't know the full extent of what it all meant. So hearing two different countries talk about their events, whereas Tunisia was a more successful one, but so this book is called The Ardent Swarm, and it's by Yamen Manal, translated by, it looks like it's Yamen Manai, or unless I just wrote it wrong and it's the same person, I'll look that up before I write it down at the bottom. But that one's told in a more almost a parable-like story that was a lot easier to understand. Like, you could see where he drew the different conclusions and stuff, and you could see how he was trying to educate and warn people about the dictatorship coming in, and how it took using essentially the allegory of these invasive wasps, essentially, who came in, and they couldn't be controlled, and it was killing all their honeybees and stuff like that. So I just really liked how he used that allegory, that metaphor about, they come in and they're doing something nice, and you don't notice at first, you don't notice the danger that you just allowed to come in, and then pretty soon everything is destroyed because you either overlooked it or you believed the lie. And I thought it was a really great parable. Another one is The Black Butterflies, and that one's from Bosnia by Priscilla Morris. And that was about when Serbian forces basically tried to get rid of the Bosnian, and they all had to flee. I know where I am in Michigan, we had a lot of the Bosnian refugees come in during that time. So this is 1992 to 1995 era, and just this woman, her family all flees, but she wants to stay. She doesn't want to leave her country, and you get to see the horrors that she has to hide from and experience while she stays there, while her family's worrying if she's okay, while she's worrying if her family got out. And I don't want to spoil what the title comes from, but it does get mentioned in here, where they came up with the Black Butterflies. From Iceland, Independent People by Halldór Laxness, and that was translated by Anderson Thompson, and that was written in 1934 and won the Nobel Prize in 1955. And that is a very long, very slow-paced book, but epic. It covers a lot of time period. It gives you a lot of the culture. You deal with their farming versus fishing. You deal with their the coming in of Christianity into Iceland, and essentially the Protestant Reformation era type of stuff. And then you also just deal with this guy who's was always on land. He always had a lord or somebody who he had to be responsible to. It was never his land, even though he's the one who worked it, until he finally is able to buy a plot of his own land and try to be independent himself, and to his detriment, because he is so he needs to be independent now that he won't ask for help if he needs it. He people around him leave him, he loses his family, whether they leave him or they die, because he's just so adamant about, no, I'm independent, I don't need anyone's help, and sometimes you do need people, and it's a reminder that yes, you strive for this, to own things, to be your own person, but you're never on your own, you're never alone. You always still need people. You can't do it all alone, and if you try, then when you are all alone, all that you fought for, all that you had, isn't really worth it when you have nobody to share it with, when everything you ever loved is gone. So that it is worth the read. It's just a very, very long, very slow process. Boulder, but from Spanish book from Eva Celsitor, and that is translated by Julia Sanchez, and that is a sapphic book about this couple who one wants to have children and one doesn't, and she's trying to decide along the way, do I love this person enough to stay? Do I want to have this family? Or is that not anything I want, and therefore then I have to give up who I love to have that freedom that I crave? What's brilliant about this story is it is so beautifully written. Even in the midst of the drama, there's a lot of relationship strife and just everyday stuff that's written so beautifully. There are so many lines in that book. It's a very short book, If it's 100 pages, it's barely 100 pages. And I have so many highlights around there just from the phrases alone and how beautifully it was written. From Vietnam, and this is a point of view that I did not know about at all, but Wandering Souls by Cecile Pia, or Cecile Pin, sorry, my writing is horrible, Cecile Pin, and she wrote about the people who tried to escape during the Vietnam War in boats, and how dangerous just that aspect of escape was, how vulnerable they were on these ships, how badly they were brutalized, women were raped, and like families were lost. Like, it was not a definite way out and escape. But when you're when you have so few options and you want to get to safety, like that is what some have to do. So they actually, when they try to escape, it's about their time in Britain, which was an interesting concept. I guess I never read about whenever I read stories from refugees and stuff, it's always and this is my own biased, apparently when I'm reading, a lot of the writers I read are Americans from other countries, so they're writing their American stories. So it's always interesting when I get that counter of like, I know we're not the center of the world, who knew? I'm being facetious, but like sometimes that is all the access that I have, and so that's once again ignorance until I learn better, until I try better, and so that's what I was trying to remedy here. And I just thought it was beautifully told, and it also had a slightly different take on it that also is a little bit of a twist that I would recommend that you read it. It's well written, and it's thought provoking, and it's just, like I said, something I was not aware of and that I wanted to remedy. And speaking of refugees going to Britain, another one is Open Water by Caleb Zuma Nelson, and that's a Ghanaian British author, and he wrote, so the story is a romance, but it also is political, and it's also like a racial story, where this black character keeps getting harassed and stuff by the police, which then affects his mental wellness and well-being, and his relationship with his girlfriend. And it's about how external factors and racism, systemic racism, destroys more than just it destroys your soul and your mind when you're targeted and and how even if you're not one of them who gets falsely imprisoned and stuff like, which happens a lot here, it still affects how you perceive yourself in the world, and how you perceive yourself in relationship to others, even if it's somebody else who is like you. If they didn't experience what you went through, it's hard to, you can only be so empathetic, sometimes you just can't fathom, and if you're not told how somebody is feeling, it's not like we can guess, it's not like we can mind read. And so it's about communication and love and loss and just so much depth and heartbreak and horror, and in a different kind of way than the war and stuff that a lot of these books are talking about. And the last one, to end kind of on a happier note, is from Italy, and it's basically an absurdist play, The Accidental Death of an Anarchist by Dario Fo. and it's amusing. It was fast paced. It was funny at times, but it still has this this sense of truth to it that it's trying to teach you through this absurdity, kind of like Catch-22. You know, the absurdity of the bureaucracy and stupidity of war, or The Trial, where he gets arrested but is never told why he was arrested, and he has to defend himself, but he can't defend himself because he doesn't know why he's arrested, and that's for another Kafka one. But it's kind of along those lines. Like, it's absurd to the point that it's trying to teach you something through the absurdity. And I don't want to spoil what it's about because I went into this blind and I highly enjoyed it. So those are my book recommendations. I enjoyed aspects of every single one of these books. I'm glad that I took the time to learn about each of them. I'm looking forward to always continuing to learn more about the areas that were kind of unknown to me before, and trying to, if something of these interests me, then I for sure want to explore more from either that country, or like for the Arab Spring, like more of that time period, because that happened in multiple countries. I would like to do any books like during specifically to that time, or like these two were post Arab Spring, or even, you know, what led up to it, so pre. So just, I kind of always go down these rabbit holes where I find a topic and then I exhaust it, whether from all ends of it, try to do like multiple country angles, or multiple timelines leading up to it, or multiple people involved with it, just different things like that. So that might be a project I work on in the future. Maybe that will be something I'll do more next year, but those are some that I've read over the last probably year or so, and I would love to hear if you read any of them, if you have any thoughts on them, or if you have any recommendations that sound similar to any of them. Happy reading, and